Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and it's that time of year where we sit down and talk about our best books of the year so far. These are not books that have necessarily been published this year. I haven't calculated how many actually were, but these are just books that I read for the first time this year. And if you would like to know more about my reading year as a whole, the last video that I uploaded was me talking about all the books I've read so far. So head over to that if you would like more context for the good, the bad, and everything in between. But here we're going to be talking about the best of the best. I have 10 novels to talk to you about, and then I've also picked out 3 picture books that I wanted to highlight as well. Let's dive in. The 3 picture books that I wanted to quickly highlight were Bow's Doll by Bolu, which is about a young girl who's obsessed with this all-American artist Amanda doll that her friends at school all seem to have. I'm sure they don't, but you know that feeling when you're young that you're missing out and everybody else has this thing. She really wants this white blonde doll that her whole class is fixated on, and her mum doesn't particularly want her to have it. One, because it's expensive and they can't really afford it, but also it's this symbolism of capitalism and also whiteness and doesn't reflect their culture, and she feels so conflicted about it as a parent but can't really find the words to express that to her daughter. So they have this falling out, and then they have to come together, and her mum has to explain why she thinks maybe it's not the best thing in the world, and together they make this doll which ends up being her own unique doll because they've made it together, sewn it together. And it's just a really beautiful book with some abstract images which I think work really well, and the colour palette is gorgeous. So that's my first shout out. And then we've got The Cat at Night by Dahlov Ipcar, which is about a cat that goes out at night, and you get 2 spreads for each scene. The first one is what we would see in the nighttime, and then the next page, the following page, is what the cat sees at night time. And it's just a really fun one to read with little ones where they can guess what's going on. And then the last one is George and His Nighttime Friends by Seng Ratanavanh, and there's something about this that is very Miyazaki-like. The colour palette is so beautiful. It's whimsical but also slightly creepy, which is my favourite kind of picture book. So George is afraid of the dark and he would really like some nighttime friends. So he goes around the house. I mean, look at that. I love the way that light is used in this book. He goes around the house trying to find some nighttime friends. He finds a mouse under the bed. He finds a penguin in the bath. He finds a panda in the washing machine. It's glorious. Love that. I have made a couple of videos in the not too distant past recommending hundreds of children's picture books. So if you're in the market for that, I'll link those in the description box down below. Now moving on to the 10 novels that I wanted to recommend. I have 1 middle grade book on my list and the rest are books for grown-ups. And the middle grade one is this one, which is Nura and the Immortal Palace by M.T. Khan. I loved this as an adult. I would have been obsessed with it as a child. So I will be thrusting this into the hands of any and all 8 to 13-year-olds that I come into contact with. Tailor my book recommendations more than that, but anyway, I think it's a brilliant book, and even more people than have already done so should read it, maybe including you, no matter what age you happen to be. This is about a girl called Nura who lives in India, and she works at a mica mine. So this is a mineral that is mined in real life and is used in cosmetics, and slavery and child labour around this industry is rife, and this is a novel that comments on that whilst also being a fantastical novel. So Nura is in this mine and there is an accident, and her friend Faisal goes missing. There's been a collapse at the mine. She has to go and rescue him, or at least she feels she has to go rescue him, and she enters the land of the jinn. There's so much mythology in this. She also has to get back in time for Eid to spend time with her family, and it just warmed my soul. I loved it so much. So yes, love that. The next book that I wanted to recommend is this one here. This is A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Nanae Aoyama, and this is translated from the Japanese by Jessie Kirkwood. This is not a novel that changed my life. This is not a novel that shocked me or moved me in any huge way, but it was a novel that kept me company and was comforting over the course of a couple of days. And I think I was impressed by its stillness. I think it holds its own and feels quite reserved. It feels very much in control, I think is what I mean. It's not overdoing it. It is what it is, and I appreciated everything that it was. It's not in the realm of cozy Japanese fiction, which had a boom. Maybe it's still having a bit of a boom, like lots of books that are set around coffee shops and bookshops and all of that. It's not like that, but it is comforting in a slightly strange way. I should maybe say what it is about. This is about a 20-year-old woman called Shizu who moves in with a 70-something-year-old woman called Ginkgo when her mum moves to China for work. And it's about their friendship, but also how they're kind of just existing around each other, observing each other's lives. Ginkgo has a partner and is maybe, to the outside world, living the life that people would think Shizu should be living as a 20-something-year-old. And it's set over the course of a year. It reflects the seasons. It's about heartbreak, and I think it's understated and lovely. The next book on my list is one that was on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. This is The Mercy Step by Marcia Hutchinson. I read all of the Women's Prize longlist and reviewed them in an epically long reading vlog, which I will link in the description box down below. But in brief, this is set in Bradford in the 1960s. We are following our narrator Mercy, whose parents have moved to the UK from Jamaica, and the life that they are living is not the one that they were promised. We start with Mercy narrating from the womb, which I didn't love at first because it felt a little bit, I just couldn't suspend my disbelief. I kept thinking of Stewie from Family Guy, which is not really where you want to be when this is quite a serious novel. So it was maybe a little bit too earnest in parts for me. But anyway, that was just the very beginning. Then when she became an actual child and I could really believe in the things that she was saying, I absolutely fell in love with her. I think her voice is so strong. I was captivated by it. I wanted to fight people in order to protect her. She goes through a lot. And yes, this is a book that probably appeals to book lovers because it is, you know, about the love of books and libraries, and maybe in that sense it's like when books about film do well at the Oscars. It knows its target audience, but I'm absolutely okay with that. We follow Mercy from birth until she's about 10. Her parents have a very fraught, often violent relationship. Her dad is a very angry person, and it's a very stressful read in parts because of that. But that is a testament to how much I cared about these characters and therefore how well this book is written. So yes, love that. Next actually is another book that was on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. In fact, it's the winner. This is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. Often when I see who's won the Women's Prize, it's not the book that I would necessarily recommend to the most people, but this year it is the book from the Women's Prize longlist that I would recommend to the most people. And I think there is a level of expertise in this book which makes the book feel effortless, and you may not discount it, because I think it would be impossible to discount this book, but you might be forgiven for momentarily assuming that it wasn't difficult to put this book together because it's quite seamless, but that is because so much work has been put into this book to make it appear effortless. This is an epistolary novel, so it's told in letter format, and we're following Sybil van Antwerp, who is a woman in her, I want to say 70s, and she doesn't hold back on what she thinks at times. She doesn't suffer fools gladly, and she uses letters to express things that maybe actually she wouldn't say in person quite so brazenly. She is a fun person to follow along, probably not someone you want on your bad side. It's cutting, it's witty, it's perfect for fans of Elizabeth Strout. I think the tone is very similar, and because it's written in letter format, you're kind of piecing together Sybil's life as you go. So there's that element of mystery, yes, but also craftsmanship, you being part of that craftsmanship. And I think that offers a new level of satisfaction as a reader. So yes, I would recommend it for that reason too. Next on my list is Hooked by Asako Yuzuki, translated from the Japanese by Polly Barton. This is the author of Butter, which came out in the UK a couple of years ago, but was written after this one. That's often the case when a successful book, let me rephrase that, when a book comes out and is successful, often a publisher will then scramble to, you know, translate and issue backlist books. And sometimes that can be disappointing because maybe those books have been leading up to something brilliant. But I actually enjoyed this much more than Butter, which was a relief and a joy. This is about a woman called Eriko who has a job that she enjoys but is a little bit exhausted by because of the hustle culture that exists everywhere, but especially I would say in Japanese workplaces. And she has become obsessed with this woman's blog. She's called Shoko. She reviews restaurants that she lives near, but also she's talking about how she doesn't really do much with her day and how lazy she is and how great that is. And something about that both appeals to Eriko but also really angers her, because how dare this woman enjoy doing nothing when that goes against everything that she has been told ever in her life. So she decides she's going to meet this woman, Shoko, and by meet she means stalk. Because this woman talks about restaurants in a specific area, Eriko thinks, well, she must live near there, so I'll just go to these restaurants in the hope of bumping into her, which she does. And they strike up this friendship, question mark, which is extremely toxic and volatile and messy, and I had a great time reading this book. It's like an elongated version of I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, if you enjoyed that, or something like The Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. It's about appetite in many different ways, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yes, maybe it's slightly bloated, could have been a little bit shorter, but I still had a blast. Next on my list is a book that is not at all bloated. This is Pick a Colour by Souvankham Thammavongsa, whose work I've been meaning to read for so long. I've had her short story collection, How to Pronounce Knife, on my shelves for, I want to say, nearly, can it be 10 years? That probably sounds a stretch. Anyway, a very long time, at least 5. And this in ways does feel a little bit like a short story collection. We are following a character called Ning who runs a nail salon, and each chapter is following a specific part of her day. It might be a customer, or it might be a memory to do with her past where she was a professional boxer, which I think is a hook, no pun intended, in and of itself. So I think what is great is how the mundane here is juxtaposed with her past and people's assumptions of her. They think that she is someone who must be quite dull and have nothing to say for herself, and people think that due to racism, sexism, and well, a whole host of things. And Ning almost plays into this in the sense that she doesn't quite want to be bothered at work, and she would quite like to fade into the background. So she calls herself Susan, and all of the women who work in her nail salon are also called Susan, so that the customers can't get to know them, can't get close to them. She enjoys talking with her colleagues in languages that her customers can't understand, I think primarily Lao, and it is about throwing punches in physical ways, historically, but also in subtle ways that bring her moments of joy and vindication throughout the day as the owner of this nail salon. I thought this was, again, quite a quiet book, but extremely powerful in that quietness. Next up is a book that broke me slightly. This is The Things We Never Say by Elizabeth Strout. I've had lots of questions about whether you can read this if you haven't read any of her Lucy Barton books. As far as I can tell, this is completely standalone. I haven't read all of the Lucy Barton books, so there may be nods to something in those that I didn't get in this, but either way, no, you don't have to have read any of her other books. I do think that it feels as though it's almost part of that universe, but I think that's just her style of writing. The way that she manages to bring people to life and hold them so carefully, craft all of their emotions. It's so intricate and beautiful, and she does that with all of her characters, which is why I think the books complement each other so well, even when plot-wise, character-wise, maybe they don't even intersect in any way at all. Anyway, this is about a man, I want to say in his 60s, called Artie, and at the very beginning of the book we're told by Artie that he wants to end his life, and his family don't know, and he's thinking about the ways that he could go about that. And that is a very tense opening to a book, but there's something quite peaceful about it in the sense that Artie has made this decision and he's living with it, and that has brought him peace, and he can get about his day-to-day life because he's decided that it's not going to be forever. And we don't really know at first why he's decided that he would like his life to end. But obviously as the novel progresses, we look back on his life, we get to experience things again with him as he thinks over events that have challenged him, that have taken him apart, that have changed his family in ways that he finds difficult to reconcile with. And I loved how all of that plot and emotion was drip fed to us. I thought that was very effective. He is just a very lonely man, and some not very nice things have obviously happened to him, but it's that sense of isolation, the feeling that he can't really talk to anyone about what he's going through, yet we're reading about it and we feel like he is talking to us, and therefore we want to try and save him. I thought this book was extremely tender and very propulsive despite its introspection. I mean, if you've read one of her books before, you know how brilliant she is. So if you can deal with some sadness, then this one is for you. Then we come to my top 4, and I find it difficult to rank these actually because they're favourites of mine for completely different reasons. So I don't think I'm going to say, oh, this is definitely my favourite book of the year so far. I'm just going to group these 4 together and present them to you. And you could say that that's me wimping out of choosing a favourite, and perhaps it is, but that's just how I feel today, and I think that's okay. We don't have to make the books compete. This is not a book prize. So this is A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar, which, if we're talking about prizes, was my favourite book from this year's Women's Prize for Fiction. It did not make the shortlist. Disgraceful. Anyway, this is about a woman called Ma who lives in India in a time that is probably not so far away from our current time. Climate crisis has hit even more than it has already. Temperatures are soaring, resources are limited, and she is trying to escape the country. Her partner, her husband, has already left and is being given a climate visa by America. So she's trying to get to her husband. She's been granted climate crisis visas for herself, her dad, and her daughter. But on the day that she's supposed to leave, she discovers that her passports and visas have been stolen. We know that they've been stolen by a young man called Bar, and she has to try and get these passports and visas back. It's a tale of morals because Ma, you would think, is someone that you would be rooting for. She is the guardian of these passports, etc. She's looking after her family, and Bar is presented as the thief. But actually their roles change constantly because Ma has done very questionable things, and Bar is also just trying to protect his family. And this is such a punch of a novel. The ending of this book made me feel a bit ill. / a lot ill, and I had to sit with it for a bit because sometimes when a book does something quite shocking, it has a profound impact on you, and you might therefore think that the book is better than it is because it made you feel stuff. So I had to think, is this book brilliant, or has it just upset me? Or is it both? And I concluded that it is both. I think the ending is justified given everything else that happens in the book and the world that we're presented with. I can't believe how short this book is for the impact it has. It's brilliant, and I'm gonna say I would, hope that this would be on the Climate Fiction Prize next year. I'm gonna make a statement and say that's gonna win next year's Climate Fiction Prize. I'm also gonna make a statement in a second saying that one of these books is gonna win the Booker Prize this year. So who am I out here just throwing these predictions around? Who do I think I am? I don't know. Anyway, this is The Hotel by Daisy Johnson. This is my favourite of her books, and I think I've read everything she's written, or close to everything she's written, and I've really enjoyed following her her journey. No, I've enjoyed following her career. There we go, her career. And I have her new novel sitting in a pile on the floor down there, which I'm also very excited to get to. This is me in a book. And it would have been me in a book when I started BookTube. I just think there's something about this type of fiction that taps into the very core of me. I'm going to say that. So if you have read books that I have loved in the past, like all through my channel, things like The Exhibit by Lauren Eggert Crow, if you were around for that. Things like The Dumb House by John Burnside. It's not as creepy. Oh, it's quite creepy, but it's not as disgusting as that. Well, maybe it is. Anyway, then you will also really enjoy this. Deeply unsettling, creepy literary books tick, 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 tick. I'm going to read you the very beginning of this, okay? This is what we know about the hotel. It is bigger on the inside than the outside. Do not go into room 63. Doors and windows don't stay in the same place. The hotel listens when you speak. The hotel watches. The hotel knows everything about you. The hotel knew you before you arrived. The hotel looks different to different people. We'll be at the hotel soon. The hotel is familiar. The hotel is a stranger in an alley. It's got imagery like this. At night, my mother hotel is awake most often, stretching, moving her windows, opening and closing doors, disturbing the fragile reality. She is an unclear archive, a great collector. She knows everything about anyone who comes through her doors, sees them clearly. She gathers these people to her in death, stores them inside her aching walls. She is possessive and at times, despite her great age, volatile. She was not always a hotel. Once she was just an idea buried in the earth. So it's almost this anthropomorphic hotel. It's a horror novel. I would say it's like Ali Smith's Hotel World meets something like, as I said, The Exhibit by Lauren Eggert Crow. It follows different people who visited the hotel, people who built the hotel, how this curse bubbles out of the earth and affects everybody who comes into contact with it, and how that curse can destroy them or occasionally save them. It is a horrible laugh in a jar. It has all of these linking images that made me want to applaud it because I just think it's so exquisitely disgusting and horrible and delightful. So if you're looking for something creepy for your autumn reads, or summerween as they call it, if you want to read it now, go forth, be terrified. It's excellent. Then we've got The Beautiful Bureaucrat by Helen Phillips. I have nearly read all of her books. I have one which I think is now out of print that I still would like to read, but I have loved all of her novels that I've read so far, and each of them has made my best books of the year lists in the years that I have read them. I would say that my favourite by her is still Hum, which was my favourite book of last year, but this one is so good. And you may know, if you've been following my channel for a few years, that I have been searching for a book that reminds me of the TV show Severance. The first season, not the second season. I'm not going to talk about the second season. The first season. This mundanity linked with work culture and surveillance capitalism, but also something off-key and eerie and disturbing. This is this. This is it. If you told me that the people who created Severance had read this and then based Severance off this book, I would believe you. So if you're a fan of Severance, you need this in your life. This is about a woman called Josephine who has just got a new job, which is good because her and her partner Joseph, yes, Josephine and Joseph, have been kicked out of their accommodation and they're struggling to find somewhere to move into. But now hopefully with this job they can find somewhere more permanent as they jump between temporary stays. Her job though is extremely boring. She is inserting data into a database and she doesn't know what this database means or what it's for. And her boss is someone she can't quite pinpoint. His facial features seem to be blurry and changing, and she doesn't know anybody else in the building that she works for. She's not allowed to talk to anybody else. And her partner Joseph seems to have a new job that he's not allowed to talk about. And she's just feeling the weight of all this bureaucratic nonsense that she's living in, and she's very tired of doing laundry. She doesn't want to have to think about new things to eat every day. Thank you. So there's a lot of relatable content in this, but it's also a thriller. So her partner goes missing and then she's trying to work out where he is. If you have read any of her other books, you will understand the uncanny that exists like in this. It's a bit similar to Ruman Alam's Leave the World Behind, not in plot, but just in that you feel a bit queasy when you're reading it because you just know that something is not quite right. And I just ate that up. I thought this was so good. So I would say I like The Need by her, then this second, and then Hum is still in first place for me, but absolutely wonderful. And then my prediction for this year's Booker Prize winner is Transcription by Ben Lerner. As I'm filming this, I think the long list is announced in 5 or 6 days. I have no idea what's going to be on the long list. If this is not on the long list, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to quit, but I will be so shocked. This is the kind of book that I think of when I think of the Booker Prize. And I had such a great time reading it. Can I just read you initially before I tell you what it's about? I'm going to read you the first paragraph, okay? I was falling asleep on the train. I was going to interview Thomas, who had just turned 90. My seat was facing opposite the direction of travel, making it difficult to read his latest book, which I was holding in my hand. It upsets my stomach if I try to read while I'm looking the wrong way, or as my 10-year-old Eva put it on a train to Lublin last summer, if I'm facing the past. In this, our narrator is travelling, as he said, to meet his old mentor, a man called Thomas. It is presumably nearing the end of Thomas's life, and he's going to talk to him about his career. But on the way there, his phone breaks. He doesn't have any other recording device to record the interview, and he's embarrassed to tell Thomas this, or maybe secretly happy. I don't know. There are many different ways that you could interpret it. So he doesn't tell Thomas that he's not recording the interview. He suspects maybe Thomas knows he's not being recorded, but he can't prove it. Anyway, this is about that meeting, and it's the transcript of what they discussed. But you know that it's not, because he wasn't recording it. But you're also acutely aware of the fact that you're reading a novel that is fabricated. So I would recommend this for fans of Katie Kitamura's Audition, or for fans of, Ali Smith's The Seer. Things that play with the fourth wall a bit as you're reading. Books that are having fun with the concept of a novel and pushing and extending the boundaries of that in a playful but also very intelligent way. An example of this playfulness is when the narrator and Thomas are talking about things that they've misremembered, not just from previous meetings, but from earlier in their current conversation. They're saying that they both remember different things that the person said, say 10 minutes ago, and they can't agree on what's accurate. But we have supposedly just read a transcription of what was actually said 10 minutes ago, but that was of course fabricated by the narrator. So they got to have the final word without actually acknowledging that, because they recorded what they wanted to record when it came to setting down this exchange. It's a book that asks us how we interpret people and how we can question the relationships that we have with people and our memories of them, because everyone who knew that person will have a slightly different version of them in their heads, and that's not necessarily right or wrong. It's also obviously about the interpretation of texts and how you can analyze things in a completely different way depending on maybe your experience that you are bringing to a book when you're reading it, which invites the reader to get involved in this book too, because you're going to have a different interpretation of it compared to somebody else, and that obviously leads to a really interesting discussion. So I suppose, like with the Mercy Step, when I was saying, prizes tend to like books that are about books and reading, this taps into that, but in a very pleasing way, in a way that I don't think is designed to tick boxes for a prize or anything like that. I don't think it's manipulative in that way. I just think if you are someone who enjoys literary analysis and taking a text apart, this will just make your brain very happy. I have lots more that I can say about this book, and I will be doing a Booker Prize reading vlog where I read all of the 13 longlisted titles. So assuming I'm correct and this book is part of that list, I will delve into it in a little more detail. I'll pick out, more themes and quotes and discuss it in an in-depth fashion in that vlog. I mean, if it's not longlisted, I'll maybe talk about it another time in a different vlog once I have got over that shock. But in the meantime, if you enjoy Katie Kitamura's Audition and things that play around with reader expectations, then this is one that you need to add to your TBR. So those are the books I would say are my favourite reads of 2026 so far. I would love to know if you've read any of these, or if you intend to, now you've heard me talk about them. Let me know in a comment down below. Tell me what your favourite books of 2026 so far have been. I would very much like to know. If you are new to my channel and you enjoyed this video and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. And if you enjoy the content I put out and would like to consider throwing $1 or £1 in the tip jar over on Patreon, that would be excellent. The support I receive over there allows me to keep creating free content on here. And there's extra stuff over there, monthly bookish discussions, currently reading videos, behind the scenes bookish chats, loads of stuff. Go have a look. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you very soon. Sending love. Bye.